In the heart of the American corporate world, a simple elevator ride sparks an unforeseen twist. What seemed like just another encounter between colleagues reveals much more. A gesture of disregard, an invisible identity, and a surprising reversal of power. Maya, once seen as just another professional, and Ethan, an executive confident in his position, find themselves in a game of respect, choices, and growth that goes far beyond the workplace. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to follow along. The sleek glass elevator hummed softly as it ascended through the gleaming offices of Pear Tree Tech, a towering skyscraper in downtown Seattle. Inside, Maya Thompson adjusted the strap of her laptop bag, dressed in an unassuming charcoal suit that masked the fierce intelligence simmering beneath her calm exterior. To most, she was just another mid-level analyst, but today was different. As the elevator neared the 25th floor, the doors slid open abruptly, and in stepped Ethan Reynolds, the brash new vice president of partnerships. Tall, confident, and wielding a sharp smile, he barely spared Maya a glance. His booming voice broke the quiet. "Excuse me, miss. Could you please press the lobby button and take the stairs for these 2 floors? I have an important call to make," he said condescendingly, not bothering to mask the edge in his tone. The words hit Maya like a cold slap. No one had ever talked to her that way before. At least not in her presence, yet she nodded politely and pressed the lobby button without a word. Ethan smirked, probably unaware of the storm brewing in the eyes of the woman he dismissed so easily. He chuckled loudly once the doors closed behind him, assuming his dominance went unnoticed. But Maya was anything but ordinary. Behind the unassuming exterior was Maya Thompson, Senior Director of Business Strategy and the very person whose upcoming presentation could make or break Ethan's new department. The elevator began its slow descent, and Maya's gaze hardened with resolve. This was far from over. Maya entered the bustling 25th floor boardroom, her expression impassive. All eyes were on the massive display where the day's agenda was listed. Critical Initiatives, led by Monsieur Thompson. At the conference table, Ethan lounged in a leather chair, chatting with other executives, still unaware that the woman from the elevator was about to command the room. "Welcome, everyone," announced the COO, gesturing at Maya. "Maya will walk us through the new strategic overhaul." Ethan, mid-sip of his artisan coffee, froze. He watched in growing disbelief as Maya confidently approached the head of the table, projector clicker in hand. She met his gaze with steady, measured resolve, a silent recognition that didn't betray a hint of last hour's humiliation. Maya's voice was clear and self-assured. She outlined the transformation strategy, highlighting opportunities for growth and the team's position to lead. When she reached the partnership department, her words grew pointed. She referenced the need for a culture of respect and accountability at every level. Ethan shifted uneasily in his seat. Questions from upper management flowed. Maya replied with crisp insight, fielding challenges and championing collaboration. At one point, the CEO nodded approvingly. "This is the energy we want spearheading Pear Tree Tech's future." As the meeting adjourned, Ethan hung back, pale and visibly rattled. Reality began to sink in. The analyst he'd dismissed in the elevator held the fate of his division in her hands. After most had left, Ethan approached Maya, his bravado replaced by anxiety. He stammered, I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't realize." Maya glanced at him, neither cruel nor forgiving, simply honest. Respect is always the right call, no matter who's in the elevator. Ethan's cheeks colored. "If there's anything I can do to help the initiative, please consider me. I'd appreciate the chance." Maya nodded. "We'll see." As she gathered her materials, Maya felt the shift of power, not as revenge, but as a quiet justice. Her pride, once bruised, was now balanced by the knowledge that integrity often speaks loudest when no one expects it. Ethan's apology hung awkwardly in the air, his usual bravado replaced by guarded relief. Maya acknowledged it with a measured nod, a silent truce, not forgiveness. The rest of the day unfolded under a cloud of tension, glances traded in hushed hallways, water-cooler conversations dipped in intrigue. Rumors about the elevator incident never materialized, but the shift in Ethan's demeanor was obvious to colleagues who knew him. As the sun set over downtown Seattle, Maya caught the elevator once again, this time alone. She stared at her reflection in the polished steel, recalling the sting of being dismissed. Yet, beneath the professional calm, a quiet resolution sharpened her features. She wasn't interested in humiliation or revenge. She simply wanted respect, even if she had to demonstrate its value before it was given. Meanwhile, Ethan sought out his mentor, an old hand at Peartree Tech who'd weathered mergers, layoffs, and political storms. Over scotch in a glass-paneled office, Ethan confessed his fear that his career, so carefully curated, might unravel over a single moment's arrogance. "You misread the boardroom," his mentor cautioned. "Maya's not just capable, she's respected where it matters. And now she knows who you really are." Ethan looked out over the city, the neon lights reflecting his growing unease. "What do I do?" "Respect," his mentor said simply. "You learn how to give it, not just demand it." Back at her desk, Maya received a direct message from Ethan, a formal request for a private meeting at her convenience. She considered ignoring it. For the first time in her career, she held real, personal leverage. But Maya didn't revel in it. She wondered what it meant for her, for him, and for the company if fear, not trust, dictated their next steps. A knock at her door. Claire, a junior analyst, stood clutching a stack of reports. "Ms. Thompson, the partnership team needs these numbers by morning, but I'm not sure this is all correct." Maya motioned for Claire to sit. "Show me." Wordlessly, Maya guided Claire through the data, pointing out errors, offering praise for catches, and, more importantly, listening. Claire left beaming, loyalty earned not through fear, but through respect and encouragement. That evening, Maya finally replied to Ethan, agreeing to meet at the Rooftop Cafe, a neutral, open space above the city's shadows. She arrived first, sipping coffee, watching Seattle unfurl below, wondering if change was ever truly mutual, or if some doors, once opened, only swung in one direction. When Ethan arrived, his usual swagger was missing. His hands trembled slightly as he set down his own cup. He began to speak, but Maya stopped him. "Let me ask you something," she said. "Who do you want to be when your name isn't on your desk?" The question stopped Ethan cold. He'd spent years collecting accolades, climbing ladders, memorizing names and forging alliances. But the truth was, he'd rarely sat with himself, truly looked at the man in the mirror. Silence stretched between them, not hostile, but charged with possibility. For the first time, Ethan saw Maya not as an obstacle, not as a threat, but as a person, autonomous, observant, unwilling to play games for validation. And Maya saw Ethan, stripped of titles, vulnerable, searching for solid ground. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the rooftop, Maya extended a simple offer. "Let's start over. Not as rivals, not as allies, but as people, one conversation at a time." Ethan hesitated, then nodded, eyes betraying both hope and uncertainty. The city hummed below, indifferent to their crisis, their truce, their fragile new beginning. Maya and Ethan had both wielded power, both felt its absence. But tonight, perhaps, they'd glimpsed something deeper than hierarchy. Two imperfect people, at odds and in need, each learning to navigate the other's world. Days passed quietly at Peartree Tech, but Maya sensed the undercurrents in every corridor. The quick hush when she entered a room, the sudden friendliness of colleagues who'd barely nodded before, the furtive glances in her direction. The balance of influence had shifted since the elevator incident. People now knew Maya did not tolerate disrespect, and more importantly, she was the architect behind the company's next strategic leap. Ethan kept his head down, volunteering for stretch assignments, responding promptly to Maya's requests, and avoiding his usual clique. He could almost taste the fear. Was she going to make him pay for his arrogance? Strangely, Maya did nothing. She led meetings with precision, praised those who stepped up, and treated Ethan with cool professionalism. It was both a relief and a torment. Behind the shiny glass conference rooms and ergonomic desks, Peartree Tech's real power structure was always shifting, always contested. The workplace mafia, an informal set of managers who'd climbed by loyalty, networking, and sometimes bullying, watched the new dynamic with suspicion. At a strategy off-site, Mark Teller, head of the workplace mafia, leaned in at lunch, his voice low and conspiratorial with his allies. "Thompson's stirring things up. She's bringing in new voices. That's dangerous." The unspoken threat was clear. Maya's equitable approach challenged their monopoly on gatekeeping, promotions, and office gossip. Mark tried to undercut Maya's influence. In a meeting, he dismissed her call for diverse project teams as slow and distracting, claiming real leaders go with proven talent, not experiments. Some nodded. Maya, unfazed, cited McKinsey data showing diverse leadership teams outperformed by 36%. The silence was deafening. Maya began mentoring junior analysts, women, people of color, introverts, not for show, but because she knew Peartree Tech's culture needed more than glossy brochures and mission statements. She championed open debate over silent complicity, merit over old boys' networks. Slowly, a new pulse of confidence flowed through those who'd felt voiceless, watched from the wings. Ethan, caught between old alliances and new realities, found himself invited to help lead a cross-functional initiative by Maya, of all people. "You're smart, and we need every good idea," she said. Ethan hesitated. The mafia watched from the shadows. To accept would be a betrayal. To refuse would be professional suicide. That evening, Maya worked late, reviewing feedback on the new equity initiative. Some responses were encouraging, others were thinly veiled resistance, anonymous warnings about stirring up trouble. She rubbed her temples, suddenly tired. This was more than changing minds. It was dismantling a system built on fear, favoritism, and exclusion. Ethan appeared at her door looking haunted. "They asked me to spy on you," he admitted. "Report on what you're really planning." Maya looked up, her gaze steady. "And?" she asked. "I told them I would," he said. "But I'm telling you first." The tension crackled. Maya smiled, not in triumph but in quiet understanding. "You're learning, Ethan. Real power isn't about who wins. It's about who changes the game." She handed him a folder, materials for the new team. "Your choice." As Ethan walked out, Maya stared out the glass wall, the city lights shimmering below. She was no longer trying to prove her worth. She was redefining it. The old culture might fight back, but Maya had assembled something the mafia didn't control. Allies who wouldn't be cowed, talent too valuable to ignore, and a vision of a workplace where respect wasn't a favor, but a standard. Each passing day, Maya's influence grew, not by force, but by example. People who'd spent years whispering in corners were now speaking up in meetings. The fear of being wrong was replaced by the thrill of being heard. Still, Maya knew, real change was fragile. The mafia wasn't finished. Power, once concentrated, would not surrender without a fight. The next move was uncertain, but Maya was ready, not just for the battle, but for the long game. Maya knew the ripple effects of her mentorship would not go unchallenged. She watched, unsurprised, as the workplace mafia tightened ranks. Closed-door lunches became longer, whispers at the coffee machine louder, and Mark Teller's tone with her sharper at meetings. The company's cultural fault lines, once hidden beneath polished glass and upbeat town halls, were now exposed, bleeding tension into open spaces. Claire, the junior analyst Maya had mentored, approached her with flushed cheeks. "I heard Mark talking in the break room. He said you're only pushing diversity to make yourself look good ahead of the board shake-up." Maya absorbed the jab, eyes steady. Gaining trust required patience, but she would not back down. Ethan, caught in the middle, found himself excluded from old alliances in subtle ways. Jokes he wasn't invited to finish, meetings his calendar mysteriously didn't reflect. At first, he tried to appease both sides, laughing at jabs about Maya, nodding at her ideas in private. But the strain ate at him, a dull ache beneath his tailored suit. He cornered Maya after a tense cross-functional meeting. "They're saying I'm betraying the team." His voice was low, urgent, betraying how deep the wound cut. Maya studied him. Here was a man who had defined himself by belonging, now facing the cost of conscience. "I'm not asking you to betray anyone," she said. "But I am asking you to decide who you want to be, not just who you want to impress." That night, Maya reviewed anonymous feedback on the internal portal. Some praised her efforts to create an open environment. Others warned of division, even accused her of rocking the boat for personal gain. Maya hesitated, then opened a file titled Culture Metrics Q2. The statistics painted a challenge. Engagement scores down among managers, up among junior staff, innovation metrics flagged as at risk. She realized then, real cultural change is never rainbows and press releases. It's awkward, messy, sometimes painful. Some would adapt, some would leave, some would fight. And Maya would have to decide how far she was willing to push, not just for ideas, but for people. Claire, emboldened by Maya's example, organized a grassroots mixer for change in the atrium. Mid-level engineers, designers, and analysts who rarely spoke up gathered, swapping stories of exclusion and hope. The mafia watched, unmoved from the balcony, sipping expensive coffee. Ethan, drawn by curiosity, slipped in. He listened as Claire spoke about the crushing anxiety of being unseen, the thrill of her first real assignment. He caught Maya's eye across the room, a silent acknowledgement of how much had changed and how much was still at stake. Mark, sensing the momentum, called an emergency meeting of his loyalists. "Maya's trying to dismantle what made Pear Tree Tech great," he warned. "If we let this slide, we'll be just another soft company, all feelings, no results." He suggested sabotage, withholding key data from Maya's project, delaying approvals, feeding rumors to the board. But one manager, previously silent, cleared his throat. "What if she's right? What if we're the ones holding Pear Tree back?" The room chilled. Uncertainty, long suppressed, now flickered in the air. Maya, unaware of the brewing insurrection, fielded a call from the board's diversity committee. They wanted her to present her vision at the next quarterly meeting. The ask was clear: define the future of Pear Tree Tech's culture publicly, with the mafia watching. She looked out at the Seattle skyline, glittering in twilight, and felt the weight of possible failure and the promise of genuine change. This was no longer about proving her worth, or even about Ethan's apology. It was about what happens when power shifts, who adapts, who resists, who leads. Ethan, now straddling two worlds, faced a choice: stand with tradition or embrace uncertainty. His phone buzzed with a group text from the mafia, a joke at Maya's expense. He read it, deleted it, and typed a message. Not to the group, but to Maya. "Whatever happens, I want Pear Tree to be better. If you'll have me, I'm in." Maya smiled just a little when she read it. The battle for Pertree's soul was just beginning. But one thing was certain, silence would no longer be the default, and the price of dignity had already been paid. The news hit Peartree Tech like a silent tremor. The board had moved the quarterly meeting up a week, and executive-level invitations now carried Maya's name as presenter. The workplace mafia read the subtext. Maya's influence had reached the most exclusive table. Overnight, the company's whispered culture war shifted from skirmishes in hallways to boardroom stakes. Maya spent hours preparing her narrative. She distilled months of data, engagement scores, innovation rates, anecdotal feedback from newly empowered voices into a story of risk, resistance, and the fragile promise of change. She called it the culture heist. Not a hostile takeover, but a strategic alliance between ambition and ethics. Days before the presentation, Claire, now a trusted member of Maya's coalition, reported overhearing Mark Teller and his inner circle mocking the diversity dog and pony show. Maya nodded, unsurprised. The old guard would not surrender their privilege with applause. Change, she had learned from real-world case studies, is never smooth. It requires sustained leadership, vulnerability, and a willingness to weather backlash. That night, a flurry of anonymous posts flooded the internal portal. Rumors of Maya playing the diversity card for personal gain, questioning her commitment to real results, even accusing her of ignoring the company's winning formula. Maya knew the script. Fear, division, nostalgia for the comfortable past. She also knew from research that companies like Microsoft and IBM had faced similar resistance during their culture shifts. Silent battles fought in the gap between how things are and how they could be. Ethan, once an insider, now a reluctant reformer, met Maya at a coffee shop outside the tower. His eyes were tired. "They're scared," he admitted, "not just of losing power, but of losing face. Of being proven wrong by someone they never saw coming." Maya sipped her coffee, watched the city pulse below. Fear is predictable. What matters is what we do with it. She handed Ethan her presentation draft, marked with highlighted sections: leadership modeling, employee voice, measurable impact. For the first time, Maya included a case study slide, not of Peartree, but of global firms where culture transformation had doubled innovation, halved turnover, and turned skepticism into pride. The night before the meeting, Mark cornered Ethan. "You're with us, right? You remember who brought you in?" Ethan hesitated, then said quietly, "I remember. I also remember who let me stay when I screwed up. That's the difference between a club and a company." On presentation day, the boardroom was electric. Senior leaders, board members, and, at Maya's insistence, junior staff observers filled the space. Maya spoke without notes, her voice steady, weaving data with stories. The analyst whose idea saved a major client, the engineer who led the first cross-team hackathon, the manager who apologized publicly for dismissing a junior's suggestion. She acknowledged the tension. Culture change isn't a policy. It's a choice, every day by every one of us. It's messy, it's imperfect, but it's the only way Peartree wins in the next decade. The CEO, usually inscrutable, leaned forward. "What's the one metric you'd stake your reputation on?" Maya didn't hesitate. "The percentage of employees who say, 'I'm heard here.' 6 months ago, it was 32%. Today, it's 58%. That's not a diversity initiative. That's a business revolution." Silence. Then, from the back, a junior analyst began to clap. Others joined. Even some senior leaders, sensing the tide, nodded approval. But the resistance wasn't over. Mark requested the floor. "Respectfully, what about results? Peartree became a leader by competing, not coddling." Maya smiled, not in triumph, but in recognition of the real work ahead. Microsoft didn't become more collaborative by accident. They changed because their leaders made it safe to learn, not just to win. That's the culture that builds the future, and the one I'm here to fight for. The board adjourned without a vote, but the message was clear. Maya's vision had shifted from experiment to expectation. The mafia's grip was loosening, but the real test was yet to come, sustaining momentum when the spotlight faded, when the hard, daily work of culture change demanded more than presentations and pledges. As Maya left the boardroom, Ethan fell into step beside her. "What now?" he asked. "Now," Maya said. "We prove that respect isn't a slogan, it's a strategy, and we do it together. One meeting, one decision, one person at a time." Across the glass walls of Pear Tree Tech, the city glittered indifferent. But inside, something new had begun. Not just a change in culture, but the first fragile steps toward a company where dignity was not a privilege, but a promise. Weeks after the board presentation, Maya Thompson had crossed the Rubicon. Pear Tree Tech's cultural transformation had gone from hope to mandate. The CEO's public endorsement, the board's nod, and the swell of grassroots momentum, these were not just symbolic victories. They were the opening salvos in a battle Maya knew would be fought not in boardrooms, but in the rhythms of everyday work. Early wins had been celebrated. The mixer for change became a monthly tradition. Junior staff now spoke up in strategy meetings, less afraid of old power dynamics. Engagement scores ticked upward, tangible proof Maya's efforts were taking root. But as the spotlight dimmed and normalcy crept back, the real test began. Cementing change. When the adrenaline had faded, Ethan Reynolds, once caught between loyalty and conscience, became an unlikely apostle. He ran the new cross-functional projects with a quiet intensity, encouraging debate, rewarding risk-taking, and, most importantly, calling out subtle disrespect when he saw it. The mafia watched, some with grudging respect, others seething. Mark Teller, their de facto leader, hosted closed-door lunches, insisting Maya's efforts were short-term PR, not real culture. The workplace mafia's resistance simmered beneath the surface, manifesting in subtle power plays, delayed decisions, passive-aggressive emails, whispered critiques of weak leadership. Maya, sensing the undercurrent, didn't call them out directly. Instead, she amplified the voices of early adopters, spotlighting success stories in all-hands meetings, and invested in leadership development for mid-level managers, the true change agents in any cultural shift. Claire, now leading a pilot AI ethics initiative, found herself the target of skepticism. "We did just fine without this," a senior engineer muttered during her presentation. Claire, emboldened, replied, "Maybe, but just fine isn't good enough for the future." The room fell silent, a microcosm of the broader struggle between old habits and new aspirations. Maya's phone buzzed with news. The board's diversity scorecard was due, and initial data showed progress, but not leaps. The real numbers, attrition, promotions, sponsorship for underrepresented staff, still lagged. The company had begun to say the right things, but true behavioral change was slow, messy, and uneven. Maya felt the weight of the gap between rhetoric and reality, knowing that for every step forward, the pull of the past was strong. One evening, Maya found herself alone in the office again, scrolling through anonymous employee feedback. One comment stood out. "I'm glad we're trying, but I don't feel safe to fail yet." That, she realized, was the heart of cultural transformation, not just changing policies, but changing emotional realities. Employees needed to see that mistakes in service of growth wouldn't be punished, that curiosity and candor were truly valued. Maya called a town hall. She stood at the podium, not with polished slides, but with vulnerability. "I've failed too. I've doubted. I've wondered if this was worth the fight, but I keep going because I believe in us, not as perfect people, but as a team willing to learn." She invited stories, not just of success, but of struggle. Slowly, hands went up. A designer admitted a project had flopped and it was okay. A manager confessed he'd resisted change out of fear. The room, once stiff, loosened. Culture wasn't a set of rules. It was a daily practice, a choice to show up, even when it was hard. Ethan, watching from the back, felt the shift. He'd spent years chasing approval, loyalty, the next rung. Now, he was learning a different currency, trust, earned through action, not just alliance. He texted Maya afterward, "We're not just changing Pear Tree, we're changing ourselves." The mafia, sensing the tide, didn't relent. Mark circulated rumors of Maya's hidden agenda, of favoritism, of declining standards. But Maya had anticipated this, the backlash phase of change, when fear and tradition mount their fiercest defense. She didn't retaliate. She doubled down on transparency, on metrics, on accountability. She knew culture change wasn't about winning every battle, but about outlasting the resistance. As summer waned, Pear Tree Tech began to feel different, subtly, undeniably. Laughter in the halls was less guarded. Meetings were shorter, decisions faster, ideas wilder. The company wasn't perfect, but it was alive, evolving, learning to stumble forward together. Maya exhaled. She knew the hardest work was ahead. Culture wasn't a destination, but a journey. A daily decision to choose courage over comfort, trust over control, hope over cynicism. And for the first time, she felt not just the burden of leadership, but the privilege of it, to help people see the best in themselves and to build something stronger than any one person could alone. A year had passed since Maya Thompson first stood in a glass elevator, invisible to the man who would one day work for her. Pear Tree Tech was no longer the same company, yet in so many ways it was unmistakably itself, renewed from the inside out. The transformation had not been a fairy tale, nor a quick fix. The workplace mafia's resistance had simmered, then cooled, not with a bang, but with a gradual, grudging acceptance that power had shifted. Mark Teller resigned quietly, launching a boutique consultancy. Others stayed, adapting, sometimes reluctantly, to a world where ideas, not just allegiances, mattered. The old hierarchies, once unshakable, had softened, replaced by a new currency: trust, transparency, and talent. Maya and Ethan's alliance had become a blueprint for change, not just at Pear Tree, but in the broader tech industry. They were interviewed in Forbes, Fast Company, even TED Talks, not as cautionary tales, but as proof that dignity and profit were not enemies. Maya never framed herself as a hero. Culture change isn't about one person, she insisted. It's about making space for everyone to rise, even those who once tried to keep you down. The impact was measurable. Employee engagement scores had soared. Retention, innovation, and customer satisfaction metrics shattered records. The Mixer for Change was now a quarterly summit where anyone, juniors, managers, designers, could pitch bold ideas, secure funding, and lead projects. Maya's vision had become reality. Pear Tree Tech was a company where people felt heard, valued, and empowered. But Maya's greatest achievement was invisible to most: the dismantling of the culture of fear. Employees no longer whispered in hallways. They debated, challenged, even pushed back, knowing their voices would not cost them their careers. Claire, once a hesitant analyst, now led the ethics lab, her team pioneering AI tools grounded in equity. Ethan, once defined by ambition and insecurity, had become Pear Tree's chief people officer, using his insider's understanding of resistance to foster bridges, not walls. One spring afternoon, Maya walked past the same elevator where Ethan had once dismissed her. She smiled, not in triumph, but in quiet gratitude. It was here, in that moment of invisibility, that she'd found her strength and her calling: to build a company where no one would ever feel small. That night, the board surprised Maya with a toast. They offered her the CEO role, a move she'd never sought, never expected. She accepted, not for the title, but for the platform. "Culture isn't a campaign," she said, raising her glass. "It's a legacy, built by every voice, every day. I'm honored to steward Peartree's next chapter, but the journey belongs to us all." As the city shimmered beyond the glass, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She'd proven something essential. Real power isn't defined by who you trample, but by how many you lift. Peartree Tech was not perfect, but it was alive, learning, evolving, unafraid. And Maya, once ignored, was now the architect of a culture that would outlast her, and perhaps change the industry itself. The elevator doors closed, the building hummed, and the future opened, one courageous conversation at a time.